By the time you're done with this video, you're going to be in a position to explain the difference between agreements and contracts, documents that form a contract pack, why CIPS exams test documentation heavily. Now look, this is part of our weekly revision series, okay, to help you pass your level 4, module 3, basically commercial contracting exams, which is the reason for you to subscribe if you haven't. Now, part of the big picture that you're going to be looking at here is what makes a commercial agreement. More specifically, what exactly is it that CIPS mean when they, ask you questions regarding commercial agreements. And to start us off, let's look at this example. So a buyer requests a quotation for facilities maintenance. Now, remember, when we talk about a request for quotation, okay, so you can also have it abbreviated as RFQ. So it can just be a buyer puts out an RFQ, okay? So you always have to know the sort of abbreviations that are related to your profession. Invitation to tender, ITT, okay? Expression of interest, things like those ones, RFP. So in this case, we're talking about a request for quotation. That's the one, right? Now, the supplier emails a price, the buyer places an order by phone, and later, the supplier sends an order confirmation with its own terms attached. From that kind of thing, you can already see that there's going to be an issue there. In fact, if an issue does and it will occur, you can tell. I mean, if you've been studying these things, you can tell there's going to be a problem because one party did send out that particular document and a party sends another document, and suddenly there's a question of which terms are we going to be using. Basically, who between the buyer and the supplier is right. That is why contract documentation is important, because with contract documentation, we tend to know if there is a conflict, okay, between terms that are going to be used in that contract, which terms do we go with. Anyway, let's quickly jump into what we're supposed to cover here. And by the way, if you haven't joined my newsletter, make sure you do, because every Monday and Friday, I do send out emails, okay? The level 4, module 3, the commercial contracting emails. In fact, this video is part of an email that actually went out, okay? There's a written version of this one that went out probably on Monday or on Friday. So make sure you subscribe to the newsletter. Details are below. Agreement versus contract. What exactly is the difference according to CIPS? Now look, a contract isn't just about a handshake or a single document, okay? A contract is the totality of the agreement between the parties as evidenced by the contract documents. Now, what exactly does this mean? Okay, evidenced by the contract documents. What exactly does that mean from your exams perspective, from the CIPS exams point of view? Well, an agreement is broader. It may include discussions, negotiations, RFQs, or intentions, while a contract is a legally binding agreement. So a contract exists when the legal requirements are met and the agreement is evidenced by the documents. Again, what does this mean from an exam point of view? Well, it's simple. The examiner isn't really interested in asking you, is that a contract? It's more of based on this agreement, does a contract exist? Those are the sort of questions that they're interested in, as opposed to, is this a contract or not? In fact, look at this example. Okay, so let's see, what do we have here? Look at this question. A buyer issues, let me just get these real quick. Yeah. So that's the one. Now, a buyer issues a purchase order for supply of 500 units. So look, purchase order, what does that mean? Purchase order. Purchase order is a no, let's not get into all that, but the purchase order is an offer, right? So remember, purchase order is actually an offer. Right, offer. Offer. So a buyer issues a purchase order to a supplier for 5,000 units of packaging materials at an agreed price. Now, what exactly does the supplier do? The supplier confirms by email stating that we accept your order, okay, in principle. Contract to follow. So, before even know, have they really accepted these? And when somebody says we accept your order subject to contract or contract to follow. So, no formal contract is signed. 2 weeks later, the buyer cancels the order. Remember, the buyer had put out an offer. So, the buyer cancels the order. Then the supplier claims breach of contract. So, before you even bother looking at the answers here, an offer was made. Was this one really, the supplier's action, was it acceptance? I mean, they said, yeah, we are okay with this. We can actually supply 5,000 units. But we actually want a contract in place. All right. So does a legally binding contract exist? Yes, because the supplier, yes, because price and quantity were agreed. Okay, yeah, actually price and quantity were agreed. But yes, because the purchase order is a written offer. Of course, a purchase order is a written offer, but for a contract to occur, there must be offer, acceptance, and a bunch of other things. No, because the acceptance was qualified as subject to contract. No, because the buyer later cancelled. Actually, the answer is C. So a contract doesn't really exist here because what the supplier did is there is more of conditional accept. In order for acceptance to be valid, it must be unequivocal. It must be accepting the offer the way the offer is. So this would have worked if a contract was signed. Okay? Otherwise, the supplier can just supply those things and nothing is signed, and then you still have a contract. It's a verbal contract in that case. Well, the documents are written. But so yeah, that's the thing. This contract to follow just says, in order for a contract to be in place, in order for this contract to actually work, or this deal to work, we must have a contract in place. So the thing you have to understand is that while all contracts are agreements, okay, at some point they are agreements, just that they are legally binding. Not all agreements are going to be a contract unless the requirements are met, okay, the legal requirements that end up making that thing, or rather turning that thing into a legally binding agreement, which is a contract. Usually the requirements could be something like an offer, acceptance, consideration, capacity to contract, which is going to be determined by either your age or mental status or the context you exist in, and the intention for legal consequences to follow. So let's move on. Let's talk about documents that form a contract. And a commercial agreement, in this case a contract, is usually made up of multiple documents which can be combined into one document, then you call that on the contract, or they can be schedules. So you have schedule, like pricing schedules and things of that nature under that document. So it becomes a pack, all right? And this is one of those heavily tested parts of Learning Outcome 1 because the documents we're talking about here are actually used in many other parts of a business. So the documents in this case are things like invitation to tender, that is ITT, or request for quotation, specification, key performance indicators and SLAs, contract terms and conditions, pricing and other schedules like health and safety, staffing, subcontracting, etc. Now, you have to remember that these documents are linked. Together they form the whole agreement. Variation can change the contract over time. Okay? So that's the thing. In fact, I've linked a video on contract variation. You can check that one out. Look, if you're interested in complete tutorials, okay, as opposed to this revision series, you just want from topic 1 all the way to topic last, depending on what your course outline says, you can access that in my tutorial, Commercial Contracting. I've linked it below. Check that one out. You'll have series of videos, questions and answers, downloads. It's one of those on-demand things. So when you're ready, start and learn at your own pace. Again, just to make sure you're on the same page, why is documentation heavily tested? Well, apart from what we've just said, the fact that they are used in pretty much other business deals, the documentation are heavily tested because they show the following. Number one, what exactly was agreed, which terms take precedence, and can performance and remedies be enforced? And to just drive that point home, here's a question, a simple question to explain that. So let's talk about that. Okay, so now the question in this case is, a service contract includes a main contract. Well, what am I even saying? So the question in this case is, a service contract includes a main agreement, a schedule 2, which is pricing schedule, and then schedule 3, which talks about KPIs and service levels. Now, the main agreement states that performance failures will attract service credit as set out in schedule 3. So the assumption is that the service credits are going to be here. First of all, a service credit, what is that? What is a service credit? So in this case, it simply means if something fails to, if you fail to perform, okay, then there's an amount of money that is going to be charged. Usually that one is pre-agreed. It is not liquidated damages. Don't confuse that. Okay. Anyway, so service credit are supposed to be in Schedule 3. Now, Schedule 3 contains KPI, as you can see here, but it doesn't have service credit mechanism. Now, the buyer attempts to apply financial deductions because let's assume there was some degree of failure, okay? And so if service credits are in place, it means the buyer can just say maybe 15% of what you're supposed to pay, you're not paying you because you failed to do this. And as per the agreement, we are supposed to deduct that much, okay, in payment. So anyway, in this case, the service credit doesn't exist. So the documentations are actually missing. Anyway, what is the most likely outcome in this case? Well, number one, or number A, service credit apply automatically because KPI exists. KPI are key performance indicators. They just show, they indicate how performance is, or we use them to measure performance. They're not used as a penalty or anything. Service credits apply because they are common industry practices. No, they're not. Service credit cannot be enforced due to missing detail. And then Schedule 2 price. Okay, look, the answer is C. They are missing. If they are missing, you see, courts are not in the business of just enforcing things which are not there because they look like good idea if they were there. So in this case, that's a thing. This is a thing in documentation, man. If you fail to put it in a contract, then don't expect us to just assume it's there because it normally is there. So that's the thing with that. And so to finalize this all revision, because it's a quick one, all right? I mean, there's series. So make sure you subscribe because we're going to have another video again. This is going to be a weekly thing, like 2 videos in a week just on this topic. So, I mean, on this module, make sure you subscribe. Anyway, to finalize the whole thing, okay? In commercial contracting questions, when those questions, if you see a question that look like if they're asking something to do with commercial agreements, whether it exists or not, then you need to ask yourself the following. What documents are mentioned? How are they linked? Do they form the whole agreement? And if you can answer those, okay, those questions, then you're already halfway there, which means by being very precise, you get the right answer and you pass your exams. Look, again, as I mentioned, if you're interested in tutorials, okay, the video tutorials, downloads, practice exercises, check out my commercial contracting. I've linked it below. And at any point, if you have any question, make sure you ask. See you in the next video.